Mixing with mic. Plugin of the week comes from Sonible. It's the Smart EQ 3. So this is the third edition, whatever you want to call it, of the Smart EQ. Third evolution, maybe is the better way to put it. So what we have here is an artificial intelligence-driven EQ, and the idea being that we can balance out resonances. Now, there's a kind of a growing population of plugins that are sort of in this realm. And so what we always look for are things that separate what this version is versus what other editions of, smart EQs and things like that do, or artificial intelligence EQs do. And I thought we'd give this a run. So what I have here is I have a track that I've put up here. It's raw, no effects, no other processing involved other than a couple of de-essers, which aren't really working that well on the vocal. So we're just going to have at it here, just starting from fresh with a song, right? So it's going to be pretty rough, but it'll give you an idea more or less of how you might start a mix and kind of a way to work it, and also talk about some of the new additions that are part of this. So what we have is a Smart EQ here. We have the top area here where we can analyze a sound using a particular profile. So you can load up a particular profile here. I have a bass profile loaded up. We would hit play, hit the record button. It would analyze the sound and then give us an EQ, which we can then adapt or adjust, right? So we'll take a look at that. There are 8 profiles that you can, or 8 different setups that you can load in. You can just, if you have one, you want to drag it into another one to make a copy and make some adjustments. You could do a quick A/B, very easy to do. Just click, drag, and move over. You can delete any settings, just so you can see the little trash icon there. And you can save presets. You can save profiles, which is over here. We'll talk a little bit about that. There's undo and redo. I have an analyzer we can turn on and off. Down at the bottom here, we can bypass, but we could set it what it is that we bypass. So as we're working with different things, we could bypass everything, or we could bypass just the smart filter or just the EQ bands. We could also reset any of those parameters as well. When we set up an EQ, the settings will show up down here. We can control mid-side balance of how an EQ is portioned, from one side to the other, and at 50-50 it basically will operate evenly on both. And when we get to the individual bands, we can assign them to be just mid, just side, or stereo. So we have options there too. Output gain control and a little resize toggle right down here in the bottom right. There's also some settings here. I'm just going to hide this here for a second because it shows the license information here. But what we have here, you could see some things here. I stored some profiles that I created. I'll talk a little bit about that. We can operate the EQs in linear phase mode, which adds a little latency. I'm just going to kind of work here in zero latency or low latency mode. And otherwise, we have options here for filters, for MSEQ. You could have a constant Q versus a proportional Q, I suppose. Constant Q or variable Q, maybe. I'm not sure what the variation there is between the two. You could show tool tips, help you to kind of learn some of the shortcuts in particular about some of the different features. Solo on touch, I hate those things, but you could open that up. And then some graphic settings, information about the plugin, etc. All right, so all of the basics aside, let's start with it. So what we have here is just the simple idea being that you put an instantiation of the Smart EQ. You load up a profile. You don't even really have to load up a profile necessarily. You could just do an analysis of it and then toggle through different profiles, especially if you don't particularly find one that you like. But I loaded up one here, which is just the bass. So all I'm going to do here is just hit play. Maybe I'll solo up the track just so we can hear it. And hit play, hit record. And it gives us a little bit of an EQ curve, which helps to cut out resonances. Now, when we have this, we have what they call a thumb here, which means we can exaggerate the settings, we can lessen the settings, we can invert the settings. Sometimes that's very helpful to see if what it is actually removing to go the opposite way or what it's lessening. but we have the ability to do that. We can adjust the filters, where they're focused on, kind of move it around. We can change the slope of settings here by holding the Alt key. These basic things. Some of these features exist down here with the left slope, right slope, etc. There are also some cool features in here which allows us to operate dynamically. So we could see here, I have a strength which kind of defaults to 50. I'll just leave it there. We have a width control, so we can widen that out to the full spectrum if we want, or narrow it to any particular area. We have a dynamic EQ. So right, which will then kind of make it constantly analyze the audio signal. This is helpful, particularly for sounds, if you have something that maybe plays in a different range in different sections of the song, things like that, like a lot of music instruments do. That way it can adapt to those settings, so the dynamic, and you have a kind of percentage control here to determine how much it's adapting to what it's analyzing as it goes through. So you have all those basic settings. Now, if you right click here on the thumb, we can actually split and add a band. And what this does is it gives us the ability to sort of divide out two sections, decide where it is that we want, and maybe we want to do something different with this area, maybe lessen the effect over here, increase the effect over here, etc. So it gives us that ability as well. So plenty to do with that. You can bypass all of it, etc. We could bypass just the Smart EQ. And all of those basic settings. So let's start there. The other things that we can do, obviously, you can operate it like a standard EQ. So if you double click in any area, you can operate it this way. Using the Option key will allow you to change the bandwidth of it. If you command, or I guess if you're on Windows and you control click on it, you will solo up what it is that you're working on. Right, so that's me hitting the Command key on my Mac. And then so there's lots of shortcuts, and if you open up the tooltips, you have all of that. Then you have a whole bunch of different filter types here, including a tilt EQ. You can control settings here. You could trash the whole EQ, etc. Solo it, and so it gives you kind of this little open, little tablet or whatever you call it, a little palette there that you can open up and kind of adjust settings on. So let me just kind of go through some quick things, because that's the basics of it. And let's just kind of dial in a few things, because one of the other major things is creating groups, and I want to focus on this. So let's just kind of go through and just quickly kind of get some of the sounds dialed in. All right, so now what I have here is a few different items here. So I'm gonna kind of step aside from the toms here for a second. Let's just kind of work with just these basics, just to kind of keep things simple here. So now I have these basic elements here. What I can do now is I can create a group or join a group. So if I want to create a new group, I'm just going to call it drums and bass, for example. So now what I have are, I've put the overheads in here automatically. I have a list of the other tracks that are available. Okay, so for example, I could put the bass in here. I could put the kick drum in here. Now there are 3 different levels, and I'm going to talk about this in a second. I put the snare drum up here. What else do I have? I already have the overheads and the snare. Yeah, kick, snare, bass, and overheads. Okay, Yeah. Okay, great. So if I wanted to prioritize something, like here, I may want to kind of have everything sort of on an equal level, in which case, let me leave the overheads here. But if I wanted to feature something, which is more or less the idea, like say I wanted the snare drum to kind of more or less be the priority, or maybe the bass sound to be more the priority here, I could move that up into the top layer so I could sort of prioritize it. And what this allows me to do now, because you could see the individual curves here, I have the record thing so I can go through and re-record anything if I want to change it, right? So I can still open up profiles and stuff like that and kind of readapt it. Or I could do all of them at once. Okay, so if I now do this, I'll adapt the settings based on what I've done. It will kind of match up all of the information from all of the members of the group, and then it will prioritize on these three layers which ones it will emphasize the most. Right. So now, if this just gives you the basic ability to kind of start with this, and I can also now take and say, how much of this do I want, how much do I want to shift the impact here of it? So relative to where I'm at, right? If I just reset this. In other words, how much do these individual layers affect each other? It's not about the differences between what it does are pretty subtle. So it's not like it makes the overheads lower. But say if this occupies the same frequency content, or say the kick drum occupies the same frequency content as the bass, here I would be prioritizing the bass for particular low end frequencies over the kick drum. Whereas if I push this over here and move the bass down here and went and did this over again, it would prioritize the kick drum. Right, so now you feel the thump of the kick drum more so than the bass. And if you wanted them to kind of more or less be even, you don't have to have any. You could put them all in the same layer and just sort of keep them all together, right? So maybe you just kind of want to keep them so that they all more or less are kind of on the same line with each other. And now what you would have here is basically kind of a global control for the amount that the resonance adjustments have on the individual settings for the track. So we could create these groups. Now, the only limitations are that you can only have 6 tracks. So you can't put like a whole mix inside of this. You sort of have to layer. So there's some strategic thinking around this. And I can understand why, because it starts to get extremely complicated. But you can do things with, say, groupings of vocals, where maybe you want to prioritize certain background vocals, or maybe you put, lead vocals and harmony vocals and background vocals, and then you can kind of put them into these 3 layers, into these 3 buckets. And that way, when you sort of blend them together as a whole thing, you could work with it that way. Then if you wanted to get them to interact with each other, then here I have all these stemmed down. Now I could put the 3 stems into their own group. And once those are, set up in their own group, then I can, work with these 3 and have them adapt to each other based on everything else. So let's just kind of rifle through some of the other ones here, because I have a couple of tracks here that have electric guitar set up. So I went through and picked these out. Obviously, there's a lot of things that are missing here, like in terms of, it's not going to give you a list of every instrument. If that's the case, just you use a universal setting. If you forget to adapt, to it, just you can load up any preset here, for example. And so let me just hit play. Right, so this is the guitar that's over on the left, but if I switch this over and change the profile here to be an electric guitar, it's going to give me a different pattern. So it's not as if I forget to do that in the beginning, that it blows everything up. if I now work here with the vocals, let me just skip over to the verse here for a second. Open this up. I can now adapt the vocal. So they have a couple of vocal profiles, vocal low, vocal high. I just have a male voice here, so I'm just going to go with vocal low.
Sitting on the ground, facing the static, and I look for a way to roll over. Murder by satellite, or praying mantis. This time an organ donor.
And then if I go to the chorus section here, I got, you know, I have the universal set up here. So let's just kind of go with that.
It's automatic, you're not on call. It's automatic, you're not there.
I don't believe that there is a background vocal setting in here, okay? But I'm going to go over the user profiles and show you how you can start to work with this a little bit. So we have this one here. Let's just set this up for vocal low as well.
It's automatic, you're not on call. It's automatic, you're not there. It's automatic, you're not on call. It's automatic, you're not there.
So let's say I wanted to do a certain thing with the vocals here. Right, I could sort of clear this profile here. Let's just say that, you know, let me just start with these.
It's automatic, you're not on call. It's automatic, you're not there. It's automatic, you're not on call. It's automatic, you're not there.
All right.
It's automatic, you're not on call. It's automatic, you're not there. It's automatic, you're not on call. It's automatic, you're not there. It's automatic, you're not on call. It's automatic, you're not there. It's automatic, you're not on call. It's automatic, you're not there.
All right, so let's say I have this. Now, if there's a particular way that, you know, I like to sculpt sounds, I can now save this, and let's just say this is my, you know, background Vox, and then I'll just put a little MWM here, right? So now what happens is that, and obviously you have to give it a different name than what's already in there. This now shows up here, you know, this will show the most recent list, which is handy, you know, when you're working. And then you have your own user profiles. So you could load this up. And now when I do an analysis, it will take into account those frequency settings that I have and do something different than what would just happen with the universal EQ. And this is really handy, particularly if you're doing, say, a record, you know, where you're working on, say, a series of mixes. Maybe it's an EP, like 5 or 6 tracks or something. And maybe it's all the acoustic drums, all the same drums from the same session. You could actually store these sort of profiles for the first one based on your EQ settings. And that way, when you go to the next song and you do an analysis, you could just load up that profile and it will sort of pull you in that direction based on what you had, the settings you had with the previous song, right? So that's like a great handy way of still being able to, unlike, well, let's just put it this way, unlike just storing a preset where it would have the identical EQ, it will actually listen to the existing instrument, right? The frequency response, because maybe you changed out the kick drum or you tuned it lower or whatever it is, and then you apply it, it will sort of adapt it based on the primary settings that you're using. So it's more intelligent than just storing a preset with a basic EQ that's identical to the previous session, if that makes sense. All right.
It's automatic, you're not on call. It's automatic, you're not there. It's automatic, you're not on call. It's automatic, you're not there.
All right, so now if I want to put this in here, let's just say this is my Vox group. All right, so if I create that, now I got the chorus backgrounds there. I'm not sure why it drops it into layer 3 first, but that's fine. We got the available tracks here, so we have That's the double, so maybe we put that there. And we got the lead, so let's put the lead track as the priority. And now I could do a group vocal analysis.
It's automatic, you're not on call. It's automatic, you're not there. It's automatic, you're not on call. It's automatic, you're not there.
Right, and if I wanted to say prioritize the background vocals over the harmony, that's the double, right? Or the double track. So maybe, whoa, hold on. Sorry, I'm doing weird, wacky things here with double clicking. Okay, here we go.
It's automatic, you're not on call. It's automatic, you're not there. It's automatic, you're not on call. It's automatic, you're not there.
All right, so it's like increase the group impact. You could hear how this is sort of lifting the vocal out a bit more.
It's automatic, you're not on call. It's automatic, you're not there. It's automatic, you're not on call. It's automatic, you're not there.
And the other cool part about this, so if I'm working with this here, I say I close the window here, now I go back, so I can put the frequency analyzer on, but now I can include all three, right, parts here with the frequency analysis, excuse me.
It's automatic, you're not on call. It's automatic, you're not there. It's automatic, you're not on call. It's automatic, you're not there.
Right, so this gives me the ability to kind of turn off the display for, showing whatever it is that I want to see. And then I can kind of adapt anything based on, what's sort of necessary, what it is that I want to do. I can start to shape from here. So just very quickly kind of going through some of these things, if I just sort of lift this out here for a second.
It's automatic, you're not on call. It's automatic, you're not there. It's automatic, you're not on call. It's automatic, you're not there.
Right, we got those other guitars there for that next section. But you get the basic idea, so you could see how quickly you can work. And even if it helps to sort of generally shape and pull you into a place where maybe now the EQ decisions that you're making are coming from, more of a shaping what's already there place. Like you have something that more or less kind of pulls things into a focus, helps to create a bit of the separation. Now you can kind of hone in a bit more and focus things a bit better. Now, there are many stages of this, that would need to be, looked at here. In terms of the mix, I haven't done anything else, no compression, no effects, no nothing. But just to quickly kind of show you how the next layer of this to get the interactivity, because you are limited to 6 instances within each group, I wanted to create a group here, which was, let's start by, creating a new group, and we'll just call this the stems or something, right? So now from here, I have the guitar stem, and I should have the vocal stem, which is here. And now I could keep them in terms of the left, right. You can't move them around. I'm not sure what the logic is in terms of that I know of. So it's not like one of these prioritizes anything over the other, but I can at least layer them in and then start to work with it. So let's just see, just based on this raw, what I've got going on here to this point. Let's see what we got. That's actually should not be. That should be in bus 7 and 8. Excuse me. Yep. Okay.
It's automatic, you're not on call. It's automatic, you're not there. It's automatic, you're not on call. It's automatic, you're not there. Sitting on the ground, facing the static, and I look for a way to roll over. Murder by satellite or praying mantis. At least I'm an organ donor. automatic. Sits in my tree, you making me itch. Sentimental, suicide, wide awake with this. It's automatic, you're not on call.
It's doing some funny things there with the bass, and I think also because this preset here with the drums is not considering the bass settings and everything altogether. So that's a bit on me. But if you get a basic idea of the flow and just consider the fact, right, that I'm just throwing this up raw just to kind of see as like a basic starting place. Can you drag it what it is that you need in, throw it on, and basically start to draw out the basic sounds, sort of cleaning up any resonances or things that you might want to get rid of that you're not don't have to now spend hours sort of working through. It gives you a starting place from which you can work, and then you can also adapt the settings for what's there. You can store your own profiles if you like to work in a particular way, or you like your kick drums very subby. You can create profiles that sort of push in that direction. And then what you basically have is kind of a working way of creating a workflow here where you could start with this, sort of lay the basics of it out, control how much of it, adapt it, and then continue to work in EQ and all of the other things, and continue to adjust what it's doing. It's a very interesting concept, a lot of intelligent ideas. I love this grouping function. And then, there's all of these things like bypassing the groups, dissolving the groups, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and things like that go into all of this. And so without, getting too heavily deep into fine tuning each element, just to give you a good basic overview of how all of this works, it's pretty cool. I really dig this. Nice addition, especially with the grouping features. I only expect that with Smart EQ 4, it's going to start to expand into more tracks being available in the groups, more interactivity, probably, more profiles for different instruments, things along those lines, factoring in different styles. You can sort of see the direction that this is going, so that maybe if you're doing EDM music, it might lean into that kind of direction. And there's no reason not to believe that these types of things could be applied to, for example, compression or other things to start to build out a mix, then maybe to smart reverb too, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then now you have more interactivity between the different elements, not just on like a one-to-one basis, but on whatever it is that you want to group together basis. One of the limitation of the groups function is that you can't have a track that's a member of more than one group. That starts to get very complicated. So again, we'll kind of see how this develops in the future. But love Sonible, great work, and I think they've kind of raised the bar here for sure with this one. So I'll wrap it up here. Nice work. Congratulations, Sonible Smart EQ 3. It's the plugin of the week.